Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure and joy, because I haven't seen him for bloody ages, to welcome onto my little interview section the marvellous, the fantastic, the exceptionally hairy Mr. Fergie Fulton. Hello, dear boy, how are you?
Not too bad. How's yourself?
I am fair to middling, mate. I will not complain.
Well, you could do a bit then. Who would listen?
This is very true. So, how have you been coping being a musician who pretty much, well, who touring work and everything is your sort of bread and butter? How have you been coping with the whole lockdown scenario?
Musically wise, not at all. Everything was basically ripped out from under the feet, all European stuff. In the space of a weekend, I basically lost about £3,500 worth of work that was in the diary, and it was just like, whew, gone.
Jesus.
Literally, the lockdown was there. But where I live in Braintree, I decided, right, I'm going to go down to the bank. I'm going to explain to the bank the situation and see if we can arrange an overdraft. I literally was going out at dinner time, because this basically happened within a 24-hour period, and I was going out down to the bank, and something came up, and I put it off, and I went down. When I left the house, I went down to the road, and I was waiting at the traffic lights, and there's an old house, it's 3th century old house, and out the front of it came this bloke that I knew, and he sort of clocked me at the traffic lights. He went, "Come here." He went, "Yeah." He went, "You're a carpenter by trade and you do renovations." I went, "Yeah." And he went, "Come and have a look at this." So I literally walked in, and he showed me everything. He went, "Are you available to do this?" And I went, "Funny enough, I am." And he went, "Can you start Monday?" And I went, "Yeah." And that was it. And it was literally, if I had not been there at that point of time, standing at the traffic lights, if he hadn't come out, we would have passed like ships in the night. And so, as a young person, when my grandfather and my parents used to say to me, "Get a trade behind you, young man, it's something to fall back on." Yeah, I know better than you. All of a sudden, as I was walking back up the town, I was going, "Gee," I could hear all this, the young me saying, "You don't know what you're talking about," and all this advice. So I'm, Jesus, they're absolutely 100% right. Because never in my life did I ever imagine a world where people were told, you cannot go out and listen to music, and you are not allowed to play. That is a total alien situation for me and you, to be told. It's not that it's not that we can, what can you say? It's just simple. You're not allowed to do it. That is the bottom line. And they pulled the rugs when they shut the pubs. I mean, you might as well look at your diary and went, "I'll rip these pages out." Exactly it. And everything that went on. And it just took from theatres to everybody else. We're all in the same book, and we've literally had the lifeblood ripped out from underneath us. But my situation, because I have something to fall back on, I'm not that bad about it. And plus, like what you do, I've been doing online recordings for people and doing stuff as it comes through. So I'm sort of there, but it's, as we talked on a bit earlier, and we'll touch on it again if you want, it's the immediacy of it. It's this to me is a whole new learning process of how to deal with being online and recording. It's not like when you're in a studio and as soon as you start playing, somebody goes, red light, whoa, 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 come here. Not like that at all. Listen, we're thinking more, all right, yeah, and in you go again.
Yeah,
you're getting there. And within 20 minutes, you're there. But this whole thing of somebody sending you a track and you do your blind and you go, right, that's the nuts. You send it off and you're like, ooh, an hour later, oh, did I do it right? Oh, maybe he doesn't like it. Oh, what have I done? 4 or 5 hours later, oh, God, and then you start going, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done it. Oh, I could have done that. And then all of a sudden, ping, yeah, that's good. Oh, or the ping, yeah, we like it, but could you just change? Yeah, no problem.
Oh,
and it's
God.
it's the loss of recording with people or playing with people, as we know, as obviously yourself and myself, we've done loads of jam sessions. We know what the immediacy of eye contact, a nudge, a wink at somebody's posture.
Yeah.
You can almost go, uh-oh, he's balled it, he's going to the chorus, everybody.
And we're in.
That's it. And you sort of read of it, but online, it's a whole new skill, and I don't think my nerves are up to it.
No,
I'm getting through it, but I don't enjoy it, but I do like the results that come out of it.
As you said earlier, there's that horrible thing of the great thing of being given pointers and given advice on what they want, and sort of constantly having it picked apart while you are there is great, because obviously you can improve on it, you can then get the flavour of what they want. But then, say, as soon as you take that away, and as you said earlier, you do a take and then 8 hours have passed. So if they come up and say, yeah, we want it a bit more like this, you're like, okay, I can't even remember how I did it the first time. What's more like this?
Yeah, that's 100%. And if your attitude is wrong, you'll take it as criticism, not as advice. And criticism and advice to me are both the same thing. But your attitude will determine whether you accept it as advice or whether you go, and you take it as criticism and you change. Good players and good people will always accept it as advice and work with the advice. People who take it as criticism tend to clam up. They get, for the sake of a better word, they get a bit uppity about it, and they don't cooperate. And I think that could be in many senses of life rather than just music. But for musicians, a good producer, like I said earlier on, like even on the 20th take of a song, will go, yeah, again, it's good. I like it. But can we just try one more? You'll never ever go, crap. You've always got positivity coming from a good producer.
They're there to encourage, aren't they? You almost go back to that kind of childlike thing where the parent's going, come on, you can do it, rather than your parent doesn't just turn around and go, you're shit. Everything that you've just done is shit.
Exactly. And if you're trying to get the best out of a creative person, you've got to support them and massage the ego that brings it out. It's the same, I suppose it's the same thing as your professional footballers get. All of a sudden you get a team of 11 people, they can't do bugger all. They bring a new manager in, and all of a sudden they're winning everything. And you're thinking, well, it's the same 11 players. What's changed? It has to be the attitude of the person that's in charge of them. And that's the same when it comes to musicians, whether it's 2, 3. And we've seen it in the jam session where people come up and they're really, really nervous. And if you can make them at ease and make them comfortable, you'll get more out of them. Because if they walk off there feeling they've done a bad job, they will not come back again. Or they will not try to improve on what they've done and come back and go, right, I'm ready to have another go. It's even we do it ourselves, and we've sat through some car crashes, but at the end went, really good. Cheers, mate. Thanks very much.
But that's the thing about being either like a good producer or a good director. It's knowing how to get the best out of the people who are working with you, isn't it? Whichever way that happens to fall.
Of course, 100%, and that's it. The egos, check your ego in at the door. We're all part of a team, and we're all here to get on with each other and have some fun, and that's what it's all about.
Right, we've had a couple of people. We've had Mr. Snapdoser said, yeah, the lockdown's been awful, but thanks to guys like Mike and Simon, we have some entertainment. No problem. And of course, Fergie here for joining us this evening. Mr. Mike Ellison says, hi guys. Sage words, Fergie, but that attitude only comes with age. Do you think that's true, or do you think that is something? No? Not
at all. The people that say that are the same people who have said, I've spent the last 30 years trying to get the feel of Jimi Hendrix. And you go, what? You've spent 30 years trying to get the feel of a 21-year-old? Get out of here. It's that thing. If you're old enough, you're good enough. And if you're good enough, you're old enough. I get the experience thing. Well, the experience thing for me has always been, and I get the same thing. Whenever I'm touring and I'm around different countries, I always get people that come up and think, yeah, I can do what you do. And you go, well, yeah, you can play the songs. But the thing about it is And any one day there's 24 hours. And for 1 hour of that day, I'm in complete control of what's going on because I'm on stage with a band and we know what's going on. The other 23 hours are just lost at airports, flus, bugs, illness, travel issues. Yeah. And you've still got to get there. And even though you might be puking up your gut, you got to go on stage, play for that 1 hour and get on with it. And I've tried to say to people, yeah, it's all right being able to say to me, oh, I can do that. You can do that once, but you try doing it 29 nights in a row.
Yeah, when you've had no sleep in between, barely any sleep in between shows.
And people don't see that. But for me, I always work within the idea that I've got Headroom. And basically for people who don't understand what professional musicians work with in Headroom, to quickly explain it, is that, say, for example, you take the song Hey Joe. If you can play that using 20% of your ability, you have 80% headroom in which you can do it. So, for example, if you're really ill and you lose 50% of your ability, you're still going to play it within the headroom, because whether you play it 100% of your ability, perfect, or 20% of your ability, perfect, it still sounds perfect. The problem is if you're using 80% of your ability to play that song, and then all of a sudden you get ill and you lose 40% of your ability, you're now making mistakes because you're 20% above where you need to be, and you will drop notes, you will make mistakes, you will not look good. So all these things that go on, I always try and don't overdo it. I look for about a 75% ratio of being able to be comfortably happy, smiley, playing, and that's it. If I start getting above that, then I go away and I practice and I work out, right, how to bring my headroom down, because I know I'm going to be tired of wherever I am. The cuisine might not be up to standard and I end up with a stomach bug or whatever, but I've still got to go on stage and play. And that is the thing that everybody, I know for a fact you've had some health problems with your voice, but you've still had to go out and do it. And people don't see that. All they see is Mike's singing great tonight, but they don't know what you've done in order to make that happen. And that's the big thing when you're on tour or you're out doing shows. They don't turn around and go, the drummer's feeling dippy tonight. Tell you what, we'll give this show a miss tonight. No, this show's going on.
Yeah.
And you deal with it.
Well, that's one of the great things about someone like Freddie Mercury. He knew that he had to have that headroom when he went on stage. So that's why, melody line changes. He sort of compensated and made sure that even in the bad situations, he had something he could fall back on and that you could always get through the show. Rather than, if you were to try and sing all that stuff exactly like on record night after night, that's not going to happen.
No, but we know that you can. I've played songs where I've played something that is nothing like the bass line, and people have come up and went, brilliant, that's just like how I remember it. And I'm thinking, what are you listening to? I've not even been close to the original bass line.
I feel like that about every gig.
But that's people's perceptions and stuff. And sometimes I've been to watch a band and I thought to myself, geez, lads, you need to rehearse more. And people come on and go, brilliant. And I'm thinking, what have we been listening to the same? What part of that in any way was brilliant? I get the idea that we don't like to criticise everybody else, but good, yeah, but not. What?
That's the joy of having just crowds who want to go out and have a good time. It's
exactly.
It's not how you sound. It's what you do and the songs you play.
Exactly. And if people think that's the greatest thing that they've ever heard, then the worst thing I've always said about players and stuff is people who go up and give a band or somebody a compliment, and then they break the compliment down and go, "Oh, not really. We had a bad night. Nah, it was." And I think, well, you're basically saying to this person, you don't know what you're listening to. You don't know the difference between what sounds good and what sounds bad. Take the compliment, move on. Never let people know you've had a bad night. Every night.
See, I'm really bad for that. I'm terrible. If I know I've had like a night of shit, because oh yeah, you sounded great, and then but I always say it's like running a marathon and knowing if you run that marathon, you still get to the end, but it's whether you ran it well or you ran it with a sprained ankle, diarrhea, and everything else that goes with it. So it's knowing in yourself that you're like, oh, that was just shit.
Yeah.
Too honest. That's the problem.
Well, there is a difference, as we've seen in some of these shows that are on television. There is honesty and there is delusionality. and your Simon Cowell's like to point out to the delusional people, not the way I would do it, but there is ways of saying to people, look, you really need to. Who's been telling you you're good? Oh, your mum. Yeah. Oh, your mum tells you the best singer that she's ever heard.
Yeah.
You really need to go and listen to some singers. You know what I mean? But don't rip people apart, because confidence of to be able to, and I think we've seen it before, that in a jam session, the people that are always the bitchiest ones are the people that never got up and sing or never got up and play. So never criticise somebody who's taking the time and exposed themselves to go up there and do it, especially if they're a vocalist. Because a vocalist a voice is a very personal thing.
Absolutely.
If somebody comes up and uses my rig, they can go, oh, it's not the sound I'm used to hearing, it's not this. Or if they use my bass, they go, oh, it's not what I was feeling, it's not. And I go, yeah, but vocally wise, to actually pick on somebody's vocals, I really take issue with people who do that, because vocals is all about confidence and being able to do, and you don't need to be able to stand there and, because the vocalist is fronting it.
Yeah.
They've got to sell it. And our job as backing musicians, I always consider myself a sideman or a backing musician, is to make sure the person that's fronting it has the best possible platform in which to do it. So don't undermine them. Simple things of stagecraft. Don't walk in front of them. Walk behind them. Stay to the side of them. All these little things sort of come together. So I very much, in the person that's selling it, we're there. And normally with the people that we meet, they can't come up to where we are. So what we've got the ability to do is to come down to where they are. And if we come down to where they are and encapsulate them or cocoon them in our simplicity, it makes everybody sound better. Whereas if we stay up there, we make them the weakest point, and the front person fronting it cannot be the weakest point. And you see a lot of time people come up to play and they're just there to, for the sake of a better word, to wank off and show people how good they are. And it's like, oh God, here we go. Well, where's the sympathy for the song? What are you doing? We all know you can play, mate, but you don't have to do it here, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you just added 50,000 million notes into it as well. Exactly
it. And they're just not necessary.
Right, we've got a few more things. We've Cobra 427ME says, hi Fergie. I'm guessing he knows you.
I'm not very up on all these, what do they call them, tag names?
Oh, I never know anybody, even people who speak to us, unless it's actually got their name like David or like, then I'm fine. We've got Kenny. Great interview, chaps. Hello, Kenny, dear boy. We all miss you.
What, Mr. Petrie?
Yes, the mighty Petrie.
Hello. Now there's a man you really need a conversation with.
I've messaged him, so hopefully he'll get back to me and we can get him on here, because that'll be awesome. David Warren says, hi Fergie. David Warren?
Hello, David. Yeah, I know David Warren. Good man.
Mr. TL, who watches our stream regularly, experience is not age. Experience can only be experienced by experiencing your experience. There you go. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. A humble attitude is needed to not believe that you know best. Anything else precludes you from accepting there is more to learn. I will die with a guitar in my hand and certainly will still be crap. Oh, bless you.
Well, there you go.
Trust us, mate. All musicians are gonna die, sort of only ever sort of scratching the tip of the iceberg, I think, aren't we? In one form or another.
The minute you think you've got it as such, you might as well give it up. But you'll keep learning. One of the great things was, I had an old friend, he was about 80 odd, and I went to him and went, what'd you do? He said, well, most days I get out of bed, he said, and I find myself, and I'll probably practice for an hour a day. And I said, why'd you do that? He said, well, you never know, I might learn something new. And I'm thinking, and that attitude of just there, of, yeah, you never know. I'm 83 years of age. I've been playing for bloody like 70 of them years, but I'll still practice and listen because I might learn something new.
Exactly.
And I think that is an absolutely phenomenal way to look at it, Mike.
I agree. Right, we've got Chris Chittick saying hello.
Mr. Chittix.
Mr. Connor Selby, your musician buddy, is also on as well.
One of the most talented young men I've ever worked with.
Wasn't he the one you did, was it the O2 or Wembley?
With Wembley Stadium.
Mm.
And the great thing about working with Connor is I get to work with Connor, who's just turned, he's 28, young Joe Anderton, who's 21, and the drummer, Rob, who's 24. And when you add up their ages, they're sort of a couple of years older than me combined. But what they do is, for me, I thought it would be quite simple at first. But the thing about working with young people is they have an enthusiasm. And I've realised I've got to stop my, what would you say, I've always got like a Jack D attitude where I don't get excited anymore. Because like, it was sort of like, with Connor it was right, here we are, oh, you never believe it, we're going to play Wembley Stadium with The Who. And it was like, oh, brilliant. And I was like, what are we going to do about parking? What are we going to do for some tea?
Yeah.
I don't believe it. How long is it going to take to get? You know what I mean? And then you're almost going, wind it in. Come on, remember what it was like when you were young, and all this thing would excite you.
Yeah.
And but I think what it is they bring out the best in me because they're making me challenge what I think I know sort of blues music is about, but they're coming at it from a sensibility of a young person, whereas I'm coming at it from a sensibility of an old person. So for me, I'm always reevaluating what's a blues bass line and what's a rock bass line. How do I stay faithful to Willie Dixon and sort of get a little touch of Jack Bruce in there without changing it? It's almost like the scientist when he says, when you're observing something, how do you know that your observation and you being there is not changing the situation? And it's almost like, how do I push the boundaries of what is accepted as blues before people go, oh, you're not playing blues anymore?
Yeah.
And I've got to try and find a way to be sort of Willie Dixon, but sort of be Pino Palladino in a way when he works. And that's for me is the fun of working with like Connor and Joe and everybody, is finding where the edge is. When I work with like Giles Robson, who's pure 1950s Little Walter, I know that stuff inside out because Willie Dixon was what I was brought up on. I know where he's coming from. I know what he's looking for. I know the sound. I know it's Bosch. And to me, I've just stepped straight into that. The Sharpies, the same thing. I can step into the Sharpies. That's that sort of blues rock, depending on what the drummer might be. If it's like Clive Edwards, who has a pedigree of like nobody is a rock and roll drummer, from UFO, Wild Horses, Pat Travers, you're not going to go in there with Clive and sort of play, I'm going to play some like Willie Dixon blues lines. You've got to go, right, I've got you up the game and find a way to play rocky blues lines. So you're almost in the realms of people like Pat Frau. You're getting into sort of a bit of Jack Bruce. So there's lots of different elements to it that it moves it through. But definitely playing with younger people is the most challenging because like Jack D, what gets me most is their enthusiasm for it. And it's like, right, just done a gig, come on, let's go somewhere. And it's like, no, I'm going back to the hotel, I'm going for a sleep. See you later.
Yeah, there's a documentary about World War II I want to watch, and got some Horlicks sitting by the bed.
I said, I've got a nice little shortcake biscuit sitting in my tray, a little tea bag, and a little bit. I want to go and I want to do that. I'll let you boys do the tequila shots. Get on with it.
And what age do you think that crept in? Because I think for me that crept in quite early on. I have to say, in my 30s, easily.
To be honest with you, I've got no idea, because it was only pointed out to me that I'm sort of like that, and I never really noticed that I was like that until it was pointed out to me, and I went, "Am I?" And they went, "Yeah," and that was where the Johnny D thing come from. And they went, something like a bass player's Johnny D. It's like every time people go, "Right, we're going on a world tour, we're going to earn millions." Really? What are we going to do for something to eat? And I was like, am I really like that now? Is that the way? Is that the way I've sort of become? But I think all it is, it's probably the reality of so many years of doing it. When I work with older people, it doesn't really happen because they've got the same expectations of me. I think it's when I work with younger people who think it's all parties and laughs. And it's, for me, as I've said many times when I'm on tour with people and do that, as soon as I finish a show, I am immediately focused on the next show. And that's it. And if I finish a show and I go off and I do something that jeopardizes the next show, then touring is a pretty pointless thing to do.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you finish, your focus is on the next show. And that's the way that it is. And because you're condensed into, I mean, some of the things you do, you'll do 22 days on, 1 day off.
Yeah.
And then another 22 days on. All right, for sure, the first 3 or 4 days, you can light the candle at both ends if you want, but I know that after a while, you will start to flag. And the thing about it is because you're playing different countries, different venues, or different places, you've always got to remember that even though this might be your 100th time playing this song, this is somebody's first time in hearing it.
Yeah.
And if they've read online with social media how great this band is, how great this song is, and you present it to them in a way that's sort of haphazard, they sort of go, "Oh, well, what's so great about that band? I heard they were the business. I heard they were great." So you've always got to think, every time you do a song, and it might be your 1000th time of playing it, Mustang Sally, you've got to stand there and go, sell it to you.
Black Sabbath playing Paranoid.
Oh, there you go. Classic examples. And for the older bands that we know to go out there and say, "Right, we've got a new album." "No, give us shit." "No, listen to our new stuff." "No." It's got to be a hard thing to sell the song to a younger audience. And that's when you see some rock bands, they've still got the old fans from originally, but they're always picking up new people.
Yeah.
Because even if the album was recorded in 1970, if you're listening to it now, 2020, hopefully the reaction you get to hearing it from the first time was the same reaction somebody got to hear it for the first time in 1970.
Yeah.
It does something to you. And I always get the same thing whenever I listen to like Blizzard of Oz, and I still listen to that, and I still can't go, "Geez, Randy Rhoads was so far ahead of his time," and yet he was working with Bob Daisley.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, Bob, great bass player, solid as you like, and everything else. But I just listen to Randy Rhoads who's playing, and I think, Ozzy, somebody somewhere knew that you could take an old head and a young, exuberant boy and make it work. But unfortunately, it was the classic rock and roll end, where the rest of it's still there, but the young, exuberant person is no longer with us.
Yeah.
But the music is always there. And that's me going into Jack G mode.
Right.
But yeah, but there's loads of examples of it, Mike.
Oh, yeah, God, absolutely. Right, we've had a few... What have we got here? A joke for Fergie. What's the difference between Bing Crosby and Walt Disney?
Bing sings and Walt Disney.
Nice. Well done. Mr. T.O., a suggestion. When you have different guests, a link to their music would be great. That is a very, very valid point. I did try and look on your website, and it kept saying that it couldn't be accessed, or there was something wrong with it.
Yes, I was in the process of rebuilding the website and doing it, and then I got shut down. So
Oh,
the whole idea of the website is to tell you what I'm up to, what I'm doing, where I am, but I'm not up to anything. I'm not doing anything. So it's like, gosh, all the relevant dates and stuff was taken off, and it was like, well, what I'm going to pay to have a website where it doesn't say anything. So it's sort of in limbo, and uh, hopefully when all this is over, they'll be back up again. All the
yeah.
links to the lessons, the music, the stuff we talk about, will all be back up in there. But just now, it's pretty pointless because I'm not doing anything. It's as simple as that. Me and thousands of others are just not doing anything.
Right. Well, let's go back in time, shall we? To the glorious early days of a young Fergie in where, obviously, Scotland is where you
Guruk.
hail from. Where?
I play up in a wee town on the Clyde called Guruk.
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 And what was it like growing up in Guruk?
Growing up in Guruk was a very strange place, as it was. But the great thing about it was, I lived in a street called Fletcher Avenue, and basically I could tell you everybody from the end of the street all the way down. I could list you 40 neighbours that were all there. Them 40 neighbours knew me. Them 40 neighbours went to school with my mother. Their grandparents went to school with my grandparents. Their kids go to school. Everybody knew everybody. But there was lots of music, lots of musicians and different people that went on. So growing up in Guruk was really, really good, sort of like socially wise and everything else. But musically wise, yeah, there was lots of clubs. The pub scene, if I remember rightly, I can't think much about it because I was only 8 at the time, and they wouldn't really let us into the pubs drinking at 8.
You had to be 10 at least.
Well, I could be 10 because I had to go and look after the kids. But that was that there. But at a young age, I can't remember how it happened. It was something to do with school, and they identified a musical ability that I had because I used to be a trumpet player. And I used to play trumpet, and I think there was the music teacher identified it as something. She pointed it out, and this man came down from the Scottish Symphony Junior Orchestra, a man named Albert Sloan, and he was talking gibberish to me, which I now realise is musical theory and musical understanding. And what he said is, you've got the ability to play, but you don't understand the theory of it. What we want to do is we want to take you and train you and teach you how to be a musician. So after a brief talk with my parents and everything else, it was agreed, yeah, this can happen, but we don't have any money and we can't pay for it. And it was, oh, don't worry about it, we'll do it on scholarships. So I then went on for the next 7 years training to work in orchestras, work in music. My attitude to music was being honed in because it was never ever, how can you say, the correct attitude of what they want in an orchestra, because what they want in an orchestra is they want people to sit down, shut their mouth and play what is on the page.
Yeah.
Don't question what is on the page, because there has never been a situation in an orchestra where they've went, right, here we go. This is Brahms, this is number 7, and what's that? Oh, you don't think you can play it? Oh, I tell you what, let's get rid of that. We'll do Beethoven. Yeah. Oh, well, you don't know Beethoven. Oh, never happens. No. You are trained to play what's put in front. If you can't play what's put in front of you, you'll be given training and attitudes to give you the skills to recognise and play what's put in front of you.
Yeah.
And the great thing about an orchestra is you can take like a 45-piece orchestra, put them in a room, and 45 people within an hour will be playing as if they've been playing all their lives together.
Yeah.
There's sometimes you go to a rehearsal with 3 people and you walk after 3 hours going, Jesus Christ, we can't even play one song together. And it was that, yeah, wow, have been. And it was that difference. And when I then went from there to the actual Scottish Symphony Orchestra, I still hadn't quite learned the lesson. And we were given our music, and I sitting down there and I looked at it, and it was like, is there any questions? So I sort of put my hand up, and he went, you are? And I went, Fergie. He went, surname? I went, Fulton. Mr. Fulton, what is your question? I went, well, down here in bar 7, it's got the thing, I'm not doing nothing. Could I embellish? Whoa.
Ooh.
Stand up, Mr. Fulton. So I stood up, and he went, orchestra, this is Mr. Fulton. He seems to think he knows better than what Mr. Beethoven was trying to write. He's come up with an idea that he never thought of. And he thinks that we should do what he thinks rather than what is written on the page by Mr. Beethoven. Mr. Fulton, do you think? And I was like, oh, God. Oh, I was like, yeah, I get the fucking point. Yeah, fair play. Sit down, button it, play what's on the fucking page. And that was it. And that was almost, when I went into the senior section for a year, that was almost the end of my love affair with that style of music and everything else. Because they're not there for creativity. All they want is people to play. And you'll always hear the same story when people talk about classical players. And I was the same thing. It took me about 3 years to lose the idea that I have to see on the page, or I'm a stage player. I'm very stiff, because the great thing about it is you play what's on the page. You're not being asked to think. Because in a classical or an orchestral situation, having 45 people with 45 ideas is not what you want. You want, shut up, watch the man at the front. And yeah, that took a while to outgrow that training. But that training is what enabled me to pick up a bass guitar and within a week playing it and start playing gigs with it. Because I was able to look at the bass guitar and go, right, that goes there, that goes there, that goes there. Yeah, listen to the music. Yeah, that goes there. Bosh. And I never really ever suffered when I picked up a bass guitar and played. Because the classic story I tell people is I was in a studio down in London, and this other bass player that was doing another session, who was watching me play, said, you used to be a brass player. And I went, how do you know that?
So you're blowing into it.
He goes, because you use 3 fingers when you play the bass. And I went, well, what does that mean? He went, because when you play a brass instrument, you use 3 fingers on 3 valves. He said, and unknown to you, you've developed dexterity in your 3 fingers that allow you to play any combinations. The hardest thing about playing bass is not what the left hand's doing on the neck, it's what the right hand is doing on the strings. And most players will either use 1 or use 2. Very seldom they will use 3, unless they have been a trumpet player primarily, and I went, oh God, he's nailing me at the mast here, this old boy. Or they've been a piano player, in which case the fingers don't come into it. A piano player will just use whatever finger is available to do the thing. But bass players fall into this thing of, it has to be what James Jameson did, it has to be what Jacko did, or it has to be with a pick, what it needed. But a musician just says, at the end of the day, when you listen to the music, you don't know what fingers they're using. It's only when you see it with the advent of YouTube and stuff. And now what you've done is you've changed from learning the song from your ear to learning the song with your eyes, because you want to do it the way they're doing it rather than the way that you want to do it. You've added another layer of complexity into something that is very, very simple. If it sounds right, it is right.
That sounds good enough for me.
Yeah.
So, what was your first band then after you left the orchestra side of things?
First band I played in there was a show band, and we basically did a few bits and pieces, played clubs. The first real band that was underground was a band called the Zeds.
Right at the end of the alphabet.
We were so called Zeds because it was Zeds as in sleepy.
Oh yeah.
Down there. But the thing about the Zeds was about 1977 in the punk era, and we had a set of about 45 songs which took us approximately 40 minutes to play.
Jesus Christ.
And it was sort of based on the Ramones.
Yeah.
It was just based on playing as fast as we could, as short as we could, and uttering profanities at the audience, with a few good covers in there as well, and a few songs that were of, shall we say, for that in fitting with the time of punk, but looking back now would not show us in a very good light. But we were young, we were being dangerous, and we were pushing at society.
Yes, you're fighting the system and all that. Bless your hearts.
Yeah, but it's basically, I mean, like one of my favourite songs I used to like playing was a song we had, which was called am I allowed to use a bit of profanity on this channel, or am I guarded?
Fuck yeah.
Alright, well, one of my favourite songs is a song called Fuck Off. And it basically entitled me going 1, 2, 3, 4. We played sort of like for fuck off.
End.
On to the next song. And that was
Yeah.
it.
Is that a Scottish anthem?
Sorry?
Is that a Scottish anthem?
Oh, it could be a fuck off, pal. But you get the idea of how you can get 40 odd songs or 45 odd songs into 40 minutes when they're that long.
It's the school of napalm death.
Exactly, and plus people's attention span. They were just there because they had nothing better to do, and it was fun more than anything else. That was a great thing about it.
So where did you go from there? From your early punk angst days?
My punk angst days and everything else. My fusion, bit of jazz fusion stuff came into all that when I was working there, and I used to watch some really great bands. A great band called Apartment 6 with a good friend of mine, Marco Rossi, was a great band to watch. The Monster Sisters, Charlie Boyle, and a good friend of mine, Miles O'Neill, bass player who I learned so much from. Most of my bass playing influences were from people that I knew around me. Primarily Ronnie Garrity, who, if there was ever such a thing as footage of an early Ronnie Garrity, and you watch footage of me, you go, you're the same. Your playing style is, you are copying Ronnie Garrity.
Yeah.
It was the attitude. And Henry Gorman, who recently I've been doing some online stuff with, when I stopped playing, I worked with Henry. I was basically a roadie, so I was his like sound engineer and sort of set stuff up, lights and all that stuff and everything else. And that was how we ended up coming down south. So we ended up coming all the way down south with that band into the Braintree area, which I think was about 83 down there. And we were in the Braintree area for about a year. And we all split up and went our different ways, but I decided to, I don't know, I quite like it down here. This is quite good. So I did a few odd jobs and a few bits and pieces, and then just started picking up the playing again. And it's basically the first big band I joined up after that was Booze and Blues, who back in the late 80s were almost like an Essex institution in their own way. With the great Jeremiah Marks, sadly no longer with us.
I remember the name. I mean, God, even when I was in the 80s, I was born in 1980, but I still know that name. Yeah.
And the great thing about Booze and Blues was it was basically a duo with Steve Saunders and John Skelly. And I've got no idea. I think I was going out to play somewhere that night and the gig got cancelled. So I ended up in Flax, which is, how can we say, a quiet wine bar, social type area pub in Braintree of the 80s, to give it a name. And the duo was in there, and Steve Cutmore, the drummer, a friend of mine, he was in there, and they sort of clocked the two of us and said, look, can you come and join us? I said, well, I've got my gear and stuff. Steve nipped off, got his drums, and we, second half, we joined them, and it just went posh. The place went mental.
Oh, cool.
And it was like, wow, this is good, because there was no rehearsals. It was all old blues stuff. Again, being brought up in that scene from before with the Willie Dixon stuff, to me, it was just sitting and just called Willie Dixon lines. And it worked. And then different people joined. Jeremiah used to come and play harmonica, and then Jeremiah started doing some singing, and before we knew who we were at, in 1989 we were voted the best UK blues band in a national competition out of about 400 people, 400 bands, to find a blues band. And it was all back then it was all televised and everything else. So we're on television, we're doing all that. And it was sort of like, how the hell did this all come around and everything else? And then the band morphed into a couple of different other things after that. And when that sort of fell apart, that was when I was looking to playing with lots of people from Suffolk area, particularly one Mr. Tony Vines was up there, and then that was in the mid to late 90s. A sort of Groove Doctors formed, and the Groove Doctors was formed with John Butters, Luke Arnold, and Zippy Nicholson and myself, because everybody was saying the same thing, that all the blues bands play the same songs. They don't do anything different. So the Groove Doctors went, right, what we'll do is we'll give them something different. We'll pick obscure blues songs that you don't hear in pubs. And we started doing them, and people were going, the trouble with your band is you're playing songs that people don't know. And it was sort of like, well, how do we do this? So in the end, we decided we'd write our own songs. Which we did. Cunning plan, Baldrick. And so the first album we released, which was called Crazy Mixed Up World, was a mixture of Little Walter stuff, because Luke Arnold is a brilliant harmonica player, but he uses a Little Walter sound for a harmonica player. For you people out there, it's a bit more toppier, a bit more raspier, rather than a big warm sound. So in the end, when the other albums came round and we were doing our own stuff, we started picking up lots of work and lots of stuff from there. So that basically got us in touch with lots of different people. So the people in the band were doing guest spots for everybody else, and we went to LA. And one of the great things we were in LA was we were in a bar, and he said, "Oh, we're going to get up, guys, and have a little play." And we were watching these musicians from LA, and they were absolutely stunning, and I mean out of this world brilliant. And we were going, we can't go on, and they went, trust me, you'll do it. We said, no way can we listen to them. This is American music, they played it, they know their blues inside out. And that's when Willie Hervis from Lightning Willie said, yeah, but look around the pub. And when you looked around the pub, nobody was paying any attention to them. It was like, we hear this week in, week out. This is what it's all about. Not a problem. And the quality of every act went up was the same. And he went, if you go up there, he said, just tell Luke to say, hello everybody, how you doing? So we got up there, we got set up, and Luke went up out, and his English accent, hello everybody, how you doing? And immediately heads, and when we started playing, because we were rougher and rawer than them, all of a sudden people were going, oh, started watching it, because it was completely different to what they were used to. And we finished that. I mean, we'd already spent, I think, 22 hours getting to LA, and then literally in this place, so 23, 24 hours later on. When we came up, they went, there's people rigging from other venues who have been informed that there's an English blues band in town, and they want you to come and play for them now. So in we go, and basically that night, I think we did another 2 showcase shows for these venues and these people, meeting all these people. And I think as a band, we were possibly up for about 33 hours, 34 hours before we eventually got our head on a pillow. Because the strange thing about flying to LA is, to get there, we were up at 4 o'clock, travelled down, got to Heathrow. We left at 10 o'clock in the morning and arrived in LA at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And yet we'd been in the air for almost, what was it, 12 hours. So we took all that time, and all we've gained is 2 hours in the time difference of everything. So the fact that wasn't too bad, but by the third day, I think that was when just nobody I think Willie just, nobody's moving, nobody can't get anybody up. And in day 3, that was it. We just spent 20 hours sleeping, and that was it. And there's no way you'd ever make anything up. But the cool thing about being in LA is whenever I get lost and people were trying to find out where I was, they would try and describe me, and they go, yeah, down there, and they go, he's really pale. Go, you know, the redhead, yeah, really white, the whitest man we ever seen, yeah, he's over there. And that was it. Because in LA, even at 10 o'clock in the morning, they've got woolly hats on, puffer jackets, long stuff, and all right, the temperature's only 28. To me, fucking 22. It's like I'm out there with shorts and t-shirt on, and these people are looking at me going, "Hey, who's a crazy grego with the shorts and the t-shirt on and the freezing cold?" And I'm like, "Jeez, freezing cold? You're having a laugh." But that was the thing out there. I don't think I'd ever come across many Scottish people that were as white as me, where you could actually see the blue of the blood through the whiteness of the skin.
When you get cold, you actually go purple and translucent.
That is it.
Yeah.
As I was saying to people, I've got to be in the sun a week just to go white.
Right, we've had a few more comments. Mike Ellison, I used to play euphonium when I was younger, so that's probably why I play with 3 right-hand fingers on bass. Thanks for that.
More likely.
Yeah. Was it the Sex Pistols used to sound check with 3-button hand-me-down by the Faces? That's apparently. Chris Gibbs, Flax was the dog's bollocks. Flax was, for what I remember of it, because I came to sort of Flax in the later years, just as it was closing down, sort of thing, and changing hands. But
Flax, the best Flax year was Flax and Mr. Quacks. If you remember Mr. Quacks.
Oh, was that the food thing out the back?
No.
No, what am I thinking of?
Mr. Quacks was the wine bar next door.
Ah.
But it was only at a capacity to hold 40 people, but you could get 120 people in it in any weekend.
Jesus.
But you used to order a beer when you come in the door, and you'd pass the money over all the people to the bar, and they'd pass all the beer back to you.
Oh, it's like crowd surfing for beer.
Seriously, you just could not get close to the barmaid. In those days, it was a great, great place to be.
Oh, Snap Davis, and I know the answer to this. Fergie, do you have an upright bass like Willie Dixon? Yes, you do.
And she's called Sharon.
Ah, is that off one of the women from Birds of a Feather?
I think it could be. What it was is I was doing a duo gig with Steve English, and Sharon is a blonde bass. Normally, people who have double basses have dark basses. And I come in, and somebody went, I don't know what it was. It might have been down in Chelmsford, and somebody in their English accent went, "Oh, you might like your bass." And I went, "Yeah, she's a blonde." He went, "Oh, typical, big blonde from Essex. Is she called Sharon?"
She is now.
And I went, "No." And then the crowd just started going, "Sharon, Sharon, Sharon, Sharon." And then your comment was, "Well, I think she is Sharon now. She's a big blonde from Essex."
Oh, bless her heart.
But things like that just happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Allen Pugh says some good footage out there of Booze and Blues with Mr. Flathead in it. Who's Mr. Flathead?
That's me.
Is it? Oh.
Well, what they used to do is, in the publicity stuff and everything else, what's it called when you rhyme somebody's surname with letters to go with it? So, for example, I would be Fergie Flathead Fulton, or Fergie Full Tone Fulton, Fergie Fell Flat Fulton, or something like that. But Flathead was one that was used quite often. Ladies and gentlemen, Fergie Flathead Fulton.
Could have been worse, let's be honest. With all the options out there, it could have been worse.
It really could have been.
Fergie, what do you think of the 30s blues players such as Robert Johnson, Crossroad?
To me, absolutely the business. They're the foundation of the music that we listen to and the music we play and the attitude. The only thing that I've found out recently is that due to recording restrictions and stuff that go, what people do with Robert Johnson especially is they listen to the they're listening to the technology that recorded him, not the man. And somebody's actually pointed out that everything we're listening to Robert Johnson just now, because of the technology, is probably a semitone, if not a tone lower than what you were actually hearing in the room at the time.
Really?
Yeah, because if you think about it, when stuff gets mastered, if you're doing records and stuff, if the cylinders aren't being controlled, when it goes from one machine to another, if they're not matched at the same speed, and when you're making something, then obviously it'll either sound higher pitched or lower pitched. And the thinking here is that Robert Johnson, when they recorded him and everything else, because as I've said with people before, when you listen to them old blues things, that's not what they heard in the room. What they heard in the room was CD quality, but the technology at the time can't deal with the bottom end, can't deal with the top end, it can't control the speed. So there's a lot of debate over whether or not what you're actually listening to is a true representation of what Robert Johnson listened to.
Yeah.
But technique-wise, I know people that just listen to it and they still can't work out what he's doing because they never had tuners. You don't know how he tuned his guitar. You can't look at a video and go, oh, there, all you've got is a recording. So if he's tuned the bass string down to a D, dun dun dun, and then tuned the A, say the E string up to a B or double B, you don't know. All we know is how we tune a guitar now, and we're trying to relate that. And because he died so young, you can't work it out. And because he couldn't write music, there's nothing to read. All you've got to do is use your ears. Yeah. And again, back to that thing we talked about before. If it sounds right, it is right. Don't add an extra layer of complication by looking at what did he use this? Did he use that? Was his fingernail and his forefinger slightly longer than his fingernail? Was he drinking Jack Daniels when we recorded that? Or was he drinking Jim Beam? Maybe there's a difference. Maybe if you drink Jim Beam, it's like, but and plus he had such a short life and such a short recording career. I think it's 31 songs. So it was all ever recorded. 31 songs is all that was ever recorded, and it's just him, his voice, and acoustic guitar. End of story. And he was dead before he was 30. So.
Cool. Jesus. Kit Thompson, the subtitles are having trouble keeping up. He said, might be that fantastic Scottish accent, but the suggestions are hilarious, apparently.
That I need to see.
So if we go from the Groove Doctors, what sort of you said you went over to LA and everything, so where did it all go from there? What was the
Well, for me, it sort of came back in the Groove Doctors was doing well, and from LA I was working with Lightning Willie in the UK on tour, and life basically completely turned upside down and changed for me. We were playing in the Running Horse in Nottingham. The accommodation fell through, and it was decided that we drive back home to Suffolk, stay overnight in Suffolk, and then I get back to Braintree and everything else is down there. But we were involved in a car accident, and I knew nothing of it. The first thing I knew was I was paralysed in the right hand side, couldn't move my arms. I was having all sorts of physical problems, all sorts of stuff. And then a year of trying to get to the bottom of it, of what was going on and everything else, we found out that I actually broke my neck in the accident. And because the injury was never identified and never treated correctly, I subsequently live and manage that injury every day of my life as we speak now, to get on with it and down there. Yeah. So the really strange thing about it is and I'm not being funny when people say about it, but that gig that night was filmed, and I've been sent the footage, and I still can't bring myself to look at the footage because the person in the footage is not the same person the day after the footage. I'm looking at somebody who is got no problems in the world, can use his hands, do every bosh and everything else. The person that I am today is not the person. Even when I look at the old footage and I watch stuff, I'll still look at stuff and I'll go, how the hell did you play that? Oh, I need to work out how you play that. And I go, wait a minute, what have I got to work out? That's me playing it. For some reason, my brain doesn't recognise what's being played or doesn't hear what's being played because the skills that we're used to play that are no longer there. So I don't know exactly how that works and everything else. But the cool thing about it was I had just recorded an album called The Way It Goes by, again, some young other people from Essex called Hokey Joint. And that sort of, the strange thing about that is where because of the accident, we didn't do anything. So the band was going to do something. And in the time that I was recovering for the first 6 months, the band got signed to a Dutch record label. And one of the reasons the Dutch record label and the people were saying was that when they went online to check what the band history was, they found nothing. So there was no footage of this band playing in a pub or playing everything. It was just like, oh, wow, this band must be something genuine. And then when we get signed up there, we were trying to get gigs in the UK. We couldn't get gigs in the UK. And our people said, no, well, you've got to do it in Europe. So we went out to Europe and we became very, very big in Europe, very, very quick. And we played 3 mainstream massive blues festivals in Europe, which was Moulin Blues, Pier Blues, and Ribson Blues. And everybody was saying the same thing. Now, you only get to play one, and then maybe a couple of years you might get to play the other. How did you get all 3 in the one season? And the thing about Hokey Joint was they were embraced by the blues society because we had all the elements of blues: harmonica, bass, guitars, vocals. It had a great bluesy sound, but we were completely, totally different to any of the bands that were out there.
Right.
If you put us on in a festival, you knew that was Hokey Joint playing. Whereas some festivals you play, one band could go off and another band could go on, and you'd be going, yeah, was that a different band? What's happened there? So because we had all the elements of blues and we were adopted into the blues fraternity, it was sort of like, yeah, we'll run with the blues. And there was talk that, oh, you could be a crossover band, you could be the band that crosses blues into the mainstream. Because again, a bit like with Connor and Joe, in the band we had Joe Burgess on vocals, Joe Fisk on guitar, and Giles King on harmonica. And when I say harmonica, it's not like any harmonica people think is playing. Giles King is a phenomenal harmonica player. But when you added all their ages together, so that was 3 main members of the band, and then you added Steve and I's age together, Steve and I were approximately 21 years older than the 3 of them put together. So you had this thing of where people were then going, oh, you've got an old Headroom section, bass and drums, and young people out the front. And it was almost like do you remember the Cheap Trick albums?
Oh, yeah.
But you used to have, was it Robin Zander on the front and the other one, and you think, oh, they're really nice, and you turn it round, and you get Rick Nielsen and Buddy Carlos in the back. I'll turn it quickly back to the front. This is what I want: nice chiseled features, long hair. Woo! I don't want to look.
Yeah, we'll just ignore that bit over there.
Yeah, and it sort of went like there, and we toured and worked and did all through Europe for about 4 or 5 years. And then there was a few issues that happened with people's personal lives and things, and we came off the road for a bit, and I took the opportunity to sort of step back and try and work on my fitness and get myself back up, because I was starting to have some issues again from being on the road so much. And that's when I met Stuart, and Stuart talked about, well, if you're going to be about for a bit, we're thinking about doing a jam session here at the Horse and Groom. So I started that off with Steve, and then when Stuart moved, he went, oh, we think we want to go a bit more rock, mainstream. That's when you came out on the vocals, Kenny came in. Glenn had always sort of been there, and it just, that Wednesday night, sort of twice a month thing, just sort of came up from there. And from that, we met some great people. We had some good fun. We did some hell of a jam songs.
God, yeah.
And it was all there. And one of the cool things about doing all that was that sometimes we'd pull off. I mean, some of the songs you'd pull off and you'd do, and people go, oh, how long did it take to rehearse that? And you sort of go, well, we just talked about it before we started playing.
Yeah, it was a kind of some ideas in passing. You know, this bit go like that. Okay, that'll do. Right, let's do it.
And people sort of, some people didn't actually believe that was how it was done, and it was like, no, that's pretty much what it's all about. If you've got ideas of songs that you want us to do, jam up. If you want to come up and jam a song, then come up and do it. We've got no problem with it. Don't think I can't play with them or I can't do that. Come on up. It's all fun and everything else. Hopefully we're as light-hearted and to what you want to do than what you want to do. So that was sort of that, and like I said, and then all of a sudden, like Connor appeared on the scene and everything else, and he ended up where he was going professional, and you got that situation where you need people behind you, and part of his band was going, well, we can't afford to go professional, you need to find other people. So my name is bandied around. He sort of talked to me about it, and I said, yeah, well, I'll fit you in and we'll do the stuff what we've done. Joe, his really good friend Joe Anderson, he joined his guitar, and that was it. And it's sort of now become like a twin guitar band, but it's got aspects of soul, aspects of rock. And the great thing about it is that Connor's voice and his songwriting ability, some of the song is always growing on. Every time he brings something new out, you just think, wow, I don't remember. I'm quite sure I remember people being like that, but I don't remember that situation that I'm in doing it, because I'm not 20.
Yeah.
We got to rehearse, really? Have we? Right.
Can I just say, by the way, as the room has got darker, you've gone from looking like Ferg to looking more like a cross between Frank Zappa and Charles Manson.
Oh, cool. What a look.
You've got this kind of shadow moustache that's creeping in.
Well, I must admit, whenever I've let it go, it's amazing. I've started getting grey. My hair's not grey, but I'm starting to get grey in the beard. Originally, it appeared like walrus tusks coming down, which I thought, I quite like the look at that, but now it's going to be, let me put some light on. How's that?
That's just so bizarre. And now it's like, babyface, once more.
Maybe have some moisturiser in it.
Yeah, I think we could all do some of that, I think. We're all looking a bit pasty during lockdown.
Speak for yourself. I'm always this colour.
Very true. So how did you find, because obviously after the accident and everything and trying to get back, I know like when we've talked about it, you said that there's occasionally where sort of like there'll be a sort of a discontinuation between the brain and the fingers, and sometimes it won't register. But there is you've improved certainly to a degree though, haven't you? Where you've been able to manage it better.
Yeah. Well, of course, this goes back to what we said before. The genre I work in, which is blues, I'm only using about 30% of the skills that I actually have in order to participate physically in that genre. What people are looking for is what's in the head to come out into the fingers, and it's the same thing as like when people say, "Oh, you could play with Eric Clapton," and it's like, "Well, Eric Clapton doesn't need me. He's got Nathan East." And if you know anything about Nathan East as a bass player, you go, why is Nathan East playing with Eric Clapton? Because Nathan East is probably using 10% of his ability to play with Eric Clapton. And Eric Clapton knows that he will never, ever drop a note or anything wrong when he's playing with him. That's why he's doing it. That is why he has got the gig. It's not because he's the best blues player. It's because he's got so much headroom to just not make mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's the great thing about, like yourself and everything else, which always gets me with like people that do, the vocalists especially, is how do you remember all these lyrics?
iPads, my friend. That's how we do it.
Yeah, but having a great voice is part of the job, but being able to remember it all and bring it out is the real skill. There's like, you can be the greatest actor in the world, but if you can't remember your lines, you're useless to anybody. And it's the same thing as singers. And I think when I see bands with iPads and stuff, or stuff out there, I'm not sure whether to think, yeah, that's a good thing, or is it just you really need to go to the next deep seat of learning, which is actually learn your material inside out, and then it becomes part of you, rather than reading it off. Because I know for a fact that when I do a reading gig, my focus is on reading, not always on playing.
Yeah, that's true.
But if I'm doing a playing gig and I'm not reading, my focus is 100% on playing. And there is a little bit of give and take between the two. So reading is a skill, and playing is a skill. Reading and playing is a skill. But somewhere, if you don't have to do it, and that's part of the problem that I've had, and people have said before when they give me stuff, is I'll end up playing it. Second time round, I'm looking at the page, but I'm not reading it, because in my head I've already learned it. I've internalized it. And somebody could quite easily go, right, we're going to take 4 bars out of this, and you go, put it in front of me. And I would notice that they've taken the 4 bars out, because I'm playing what I've already played. But there are some people out there that no matter how many times they play it, it doesn't get internalized. Yeah. But what it is, they can play it every time it's put in front of them.
Yeah.
No, perfect. And that is the secret of the good orchestra pit player, or the good session player that sits in there, is just quality every time. They don't want anything of you in it. They want quality.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I know, for like, if I've done recording in a studio, if I'm still reading the words while I'm trying to sing, that you sacrifice some of your performance for the fact that you are reading it.
Yeah.
And I know I've had that so many times. But I also know that if you do get to that point where they're relying on, reading lyrics and everything, if you take those lyrics away, then it forces their brain to try and make the connections of where the lyrics go and follow suit. And it's amazing how much you can remember if you take away that security blanket.
Yeah, but what you get from them now is you're now starting to get them as a performance. Because the great thing about it is it doesn't make a difference if you sing the right lines or the wrong lines, so long as you deliver it with the belief that is what you're doing. And in some cases, you can be hesitant with lines, and you're looking at stuff, and you become sort of you lose the freedom of it.
Yeah.
And it's some of the hardest stuff I've ever had to learn and play along with is, believe it or not, is Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash as a singer can sing so far behind the bar and sing across the bar in ways where you're like going, and he goes, well, I see you coming down the road as a wind down there. Jeez, where the hell did that come from? You've just missed 2 bars of vocals out, crammed it into the last 2. And of course, if you're playing that song with somebody, your head's going 1, 2, right, this is the change, and you go, oh, he's not done the change. All right, I'll wait for him. All right, so it's going to be 4 bars where he starts singing, and then he starts singing. Oh no, it's not. Oh, he's changing in the right place. And it is quite scary, but as any singer, anybody that can sing across the bar, move the time frame, great singers have been able to do it, and that's the sign of a great delivery, is that you can wait and let the time just slightly back, then catch it up, drag it back, make it work.
Yeah, it's play around with it, isn't it, and make it your own.
Yeah, of course it is. Stretching out, making it down.
Right.
But that's the same. Great guitarists, great drummers, great bass players, anything else.
Right, my boy. That's an hour and 15 minutes already.
Is it?
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah, I know. It's scary, isn't it? It's always like this when having a good old catch up. So, what is going to be your plan when we do eventually get back to whatever kind of situation will allow? Have you got anything in the pipeline?
There's nothing in the diary solid, because as we stand just now, nobody, it's not so much the UK, but Europe or anybody, just now knows what's going on.
Yeah.
We've got this thing where we're allowed to do gigs outside, but there's a certain amount of number. But your audience isn't allowed to sing. And you go, what? So you sort of go, well, how's that? We're in a field, we've got 2,000 people, and they start singing, and we go, whoa, stop.
Everybody, pipe it down, will you?
If anybody sings, you leave the field. That's it. I mean, it's the same thing, and they're saying they're opening pubs, but they're not allowing bands to play because singing. The bands are standing close together, and well, man, everybody's standing next. It's.
I think it's going to be a real. I think even if they do allow bands to play outside and in the garden, they're going to have restricted like clientele and all this kind of thing and all the distancing. It's going to, unfortunately, and I know it's got to be done for sensible reasons, but that does kill a huge part of why people go to see live music. Because people want to dance, people want to sing along, people want to drink, they want to have fun, they want to get involved. If people are sort of basically told to be like cabaret, where you have to sit at a table, sit and watch and appreciate and do a little clap, is that the kind of thing that is going to appeal for people who want to go to pubs? I don't know if it's going to work.
But it's not going to work, and it's certainly going to work with young people. The great thing in music has always been about, from my early years and everything else, is having your hand around people's necks.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you come away at the end of the night, regardless of what it's about. You've got a sore throat from shouting, you're a bit. That's what it's about. People being crammed in. I mean, I saw, which is again comes from the grumpy old man thing. I saw the Sham 69 tribute, or the Sham 69 boys,
right?
The thing, and I was watching it in the pub, and I must admit, musically it was there and everything else, and people were, oh, it's great, it's just like the old days and everything. And I'm thinking, because when I was watching punk bands, I was in punk bands in the old days. What you had in the pub was you had this nervous tension that any minute now this is all going to kick off.
Yeah,
there's going to be bottles, fists, you name it. What we've got now is we've got people in their 50s and their 60s watching people in their 50s and their 60s going, that's good. Well, they go, nah, it was never like that. It's been brought forward, and as you say, it's almost like it's been homogenized, dried out. The thing about any good live music is there's always a little element of danger in it. There's always a little element that you don't know what the person next to you is going to do. You don't know what they're going to do. It's that thing. And you come out of it, you'll have made new friends, people that you would never have done, and all of a sudden, you connect through music. And it might be somebody where you've been at a band and you've sat there or you've stood there for like 45 minutes and not engaged, and all of a sudden one song comes on, it's your favourite, you got up, you were there, and then somebody else, and all of a sudden that one song has engaged you with somebody else.
You're all dancing with each other, you're all new best friends, you're all buying drinks for each other.
Yeah, I remember when I got that, I'm boss, whatever it is. That is what it's all about. Music is not about socially distancing. Music is the exact opposite of social distancing. It's about getting people together.
Yeah.
As the Beatles famously said, smashing nicely, hey, let's come together.
Right.
A lot of charity work.
Just before we go, Kit says, my dad toured with Eric Bibb, a great blues gospel player, gospel singer and guitar player. Eric chose to use Dave Bronze on bass, who also plays with Clapton, Tom Jones, Andy Fairweather Lowe, Robin Trow, amongst others. For that very reason you described, feeling, he's just class. Great point well made.
Dave's the governor.
Great point well made about getting what's in your head and heart out via your fingers and the instrument, whether bass, guitar, drums, or whatever. Or trumpet.
Yeah.
Steve Anderson, it's all about the shared experience. Absolutely. That's why I think we're going to really, really struggle. Like, you go to a theatre show, yeah, you're going to see the show. It's a nice performance, and it can be very moving. It can be very emotional, but it's not that same sort of fireworks and just connection that you have with everyone else at a show where you've got like everybody singing together, or the audience participation, say the sweat, everyone roasting to absolute high hell, but still gonna dance the night away, all that kind of thing. It's that, isn't it, that makes it.
Of course it is. It's the same idea as why I can honestly say any book I've ever read that's been made into a film has never lived up to the book that I read, because the book I read is my imagination. The characters, I give them the voices, I vision them. When I see them on somebody else's vision of it, nah, they don't talk like that. For starters, they ain't got a Scottish accent. What the rest of that for? It's that weird, and that's one of the reasons why I think books work so well, because it's your imagination. You see the characters, you hear the voices, how you talk. If you go and watch a play, you hear the noise that's in a theatre, the noise of a stage, you hear people done. When you watch a film, it's good, but it's not the same as the other two.
Yeah.
The film is a finished, complete thing that no matter how many times you watch it, will always be the same. You might notice some little different things in it. A performance, no two performances are the same.
No.
And that's what makes it so much fun for what we do. Is we nail it one night and we bollocks it up the next night.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's why people come back to see, bands over and over again, especially if they're bands that have banter with the audience. You're always chucking in new material, you're shaking up a bit. You never quite know what you're going to get.
And the good thing about it is the audience actually appreciate it more when we bollocks it up.
Thank
they
God.
Actually get a kick. We could nail the most complicated song in the world and there would be indifference. We mess up a simple song. They're all there. Oh, jeez. There's a reason why programs like It'll Be Alright Tonight exist, because people like to watch other people cock it up.
Absolutely. Right, well, on that note, Mr. Ferg, I thank you from the bottom of my heart that you joined us this evening. I know it was a bit of a scramble for you to get on here, obviously having a normal day job as well and everything.
Well, as we said before and everything else, it's always going. It's got to go on. The show has to go on. We'll get round it. We'll make it work. It's not a problem.
Indeed.
But I'll guarantee you that in about 20 minutes, I'll be sound asleep on the sofa, dribbling cornflakes out the side of my mouth.
Sounds like heaven to me. I think I'll be doing the same. All right, bud. Well, it's been great catching up. So you take care of yourself, all right?
Will do, Mike.
All right, mate. And thank you to everyone who joined in and tuned in and liked and commented. Lovely to have you all with us as well. So hopefully, mate, I will see you soon.
Yeah, will do. When all this craziness is over, we'll have a beer.
Indeed. All right, mate. Take care. I'll see you soon.
Will do, mate. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.